the end of a long life exploring. I'm recounting my experiences of the radical changes that I managed to survive for 97 years at this time. What is there to remember and learn from my experience? What can be the verdict from a surviving eyewitness and participant, born in 1926 in Austria, who skirted the edge of a German catastrophe as a teenager in the Hitler Youth and a young soldier in the Waffen-SS. This played itself out in a home of a new life in post-war London, finally ending up a respectable Orthodox Jew in Johannesburg, South Africa. Thereafter, in London, where I live now, this is my story. I was born in 1926 as the potential Catholic heir to two dilapidated baronial estates in Austria. My family tree dates back to 1751. We had a proud past aristocratic history with military service as officers in the Imperial Austrian Army. My baby sister Irmi was born in 1930, when Sister Rosie was 2 and I nearly 4. 5 weeks after Irmi's birth, I was awakened in the middle of one night by Dad in his nightshirt and led to the parents' bedroom. Mutti was lying there on the bed in her white nightie. I bent down and she kissed me on both cheeks. Not a word was spoken. Dad took me back to my bed. This must have been the night Mutti died in January 21st, 1930. I would always remember this last farewell. At just under 4 years old, I could be the only one of us with recallable memories of our mother. Our family moved from Austria to Hitler's Germany in 1935. We were on a German train. It was naturally running on time. We were about to stop on the German border. Rosie was nursing her favorite baby doll, which she adored. Unusually for Europe at that time, her doll was a dark coffee color. Now Rosie unwrapped an expensive white doll with blonde braid and blue eyes. Mutti wanted her to give up her dark-skinned baby. Mutti tried to persuade her. Father joined in. She would have none of it. Then suddenly Dad grabbed the black doll and put it away. Rosie was crying bitterly. I was dumbfounded and speechless. Rosie would never touch the new doll. that to the end of her life she would still recall her horror of her experience. In retrospect, the German border police would probably have confiscated the undesirable dark-skinned girl. We would certainly have made a bad impression with the German authorities. In Germany, everything had to look more right than in Austria. Even dolls had to conform with the Aryan ideal. In Germany, I would carry my Ahnen pass with my family history going back over 4 generations, filled in and rigorously checked and stamped by page by the Reich government. The family settled in Germany on a farm in the countryside. Both Rosie and I became part of the Hitler Youth Jungvolk, the younger version of the Hitler Youth for boys and girls. Father joined the party and was appointed a captain in the German Wehrmacht in 1936, a great promotion. Father would be called up when the war was declared in 1939, and Mutti was to be left to cope on her own with 6 children on a farm. Us children were split up into small groups as the family moved around. I stayed with Uncle Hannes, relatives in the Czech Sudetenland, and I soon became Stammführer, de facto leader of the Hitler Youth groups there. With visit with Uncle Hannes to one of his fabric factories, I saw a Jewish slaver at work for the first time, evident by the yellow star they wore. A girl started staring at me, and I stared back to her. My army call-up was deferred until I finished high school. In 1944, an elite motorized Waffen-SS band arrived in our village. They wanted volunteers. I signed up. It seemed to be worth a try. I was called up for training in July 1944 and then posted to the front in April 1945 to defend Germany against the incoming Russians at the River Oder, 6 kilometers northeast of Berlin. The approach to the river was under heavy Russian artillery fire. We were guarding the front line for nearly 6 days without any support, no food or ammunition. As a youngster with the least stake to lose, I initiated and organized the retreat to find our commandant at the back. We surrendered to the Americans and then to the British and were taken as POWs to England. In London, I led our prisoners as part of the bomb disposal unit in London for the next 2 years. While a POW in London, I successfully applied to the London School of Economics as an Austrian rather than as a German to study there. I married and I remained a British businessman in England and later on the continent until our family, now with our 2 children, moved to South Africa in 1975 for new business opportunities. From the beginning of our stay in South Africa, Pam and I were both employed in Jewish companies. It made it natural that we would be surrounded by Jewish friends. Pam's friend, the rabbi's wife, introduced us to her husband, Barry Marcus. We felt at home. We began to consider conversion to Judaism. Barry Marcus took us seriously and gave us a good idea of what it meant to become Orthodox Jews. We would have to prove our eligibility by conduct and learning. Rabbi Marcus was not much concerned about my German past, accepted us as a family. It was up to us to fit in. There were a lot of conditions for us, most of which would be life-changing. Dusk the following Friday evening found us four in our best outfits walking down to our first Shabbos evening service. How would this great Jewish congregation feel about this past German interloper? What could I, with my past, dare to face it? But suddenly I was shaken by an amazing exaltation, a burst of gratitude and happiness like the one that had gripped me when I first stepped on English soil. We had been invited in, given a chance to prove ourselves. We had to do our best to deserve it. We had to take our chance with open arms. So we did. We were welcomed. Having made a rather daring attempt to become Jewish, we were respected rather than suspect. Towards the end of our third year of study, all four of us were told our conversion could not now take place, and we were given our Jewish names. Pam and I were soon to be known as Rivka and Yitzhak, named for the devoted biblical patriarchal couple, Rebecca and Isaac. Now, as regulars, we were soon part of the community, invited to meals and to join community activities. Now, on the next step, getting married in conformity with the Jewish law, this time, for us, we had been married 15 years with children. This was a really special experience in December 1984. Throughout our lives, we also maintained close contact with our German family, with reunions every 5 years. The most memorable of these was in 2017 when we visited our original home, the Schloss in Kneixendorf. In recently recorded my story at the United States Holocaust Memorial Museum for their collection of oral testimonies. I've also had the opportunity to tell my life story several times at public gatherings. I've also arranged to bequeath my personal and family documents, photographs, and artifacts to the Wiener Holocaust Library in London. Last year, in 2022, I celebrated my second bar mitzvah in London at the age of 96, surrounded by our family and the Jewish community. I could look back at nearly 40 years of being Jewish, feeling very much like I belonged.
מזל טוב!